Hi there, I'm Matt Gibson, and today we're in Toronto's West End at the Indie Ale House Barrel Room to speak with owner Jason Fisher about why he decided to open a brew pub in Toronto's Junction neighborhood. Let's go inside. So thanks for having us here, Jason. I guess I just wanted to start by sort of getting into how you got into the craft beer industry. What was sort of your first exposure to craft beer and why you decided to follow that path as a profession?
When I was 16 in grade 10, I was looking for something to do for a science project with a buddy of mine, and we thought we might make some sort of airplane device. We weren't really sure. We went to Zeller's because that's what you did.
Yeah.
And we saw a John Bull homebrew kit, and we're like, yeah, let's do this. We figured we could talk about yeast a lot, things that were alive, and chemistry. We're like, this would be amazing. And I made beer, and we made it in my basement. And
how good was it?
Well, you're supposed to let it. The recipe had we brewed it. We followed that perfectly, and then you're supposed to. We had a little capper, put it in the bottles, leave it for 12 days, and we left it for about an hour. It's no good. And we left it for about 2 days. I'm like, it's still no good. And then I remember the day where. What? It tastes like beer.
Yeah.
So we were very proud of ourselves. We were 16.
Yeah.
And we got an A, and we did this thing. And we turned a lab room in the high school into a little brewery shop. That
nice.
Lasted about 3 months till enough teachers thought this was no longer chemistry.
Yeah, 16-year-olds making beer is maybe
like, what's happening down here?
Yeah.
So I did it. I made it. It was amazing. And I was very happy with the fact that I did something I didn't know anything about. Took this thing, read the instructions, and made beer. And then kind of in the back of my mind, I thought, well, that would be fun to do. In the mid-90s, I really wanted to do this and just didn't have the means to do it. My big guess was it'd be about $1 million, and I had about negative 100,000 in student loans. So it didn't seem like it was going to happen. Eventually, time came where I had some money, and I felt like I had the acumen. And there was still no real craft beer scene in Ontario in 2005 to 2008. It had started, but it wasn't what it is today. That's for sure.
So then why did you decide brew pub instead of commercial brewery?
So initially I wanted to build something really small, like this size, with a little tabletop brewery and maybe have a barbecue on Fridays and just make the kind of beer I wanted. And that's great, and there's only 2 of you, and that makes life a lot easier, but the mathematical model doesn't support that very well. I'd be living in a barrel somewhere, I think. So I like the brew pub model because there were examples that came before me on how they did it and how they scaled and what they focused on. And those were guys you could actually pick up the phone and talk to, and they were extremely happy to talk to. We drove down to Dogfish Head and spent an hour with Sam, and he said, do this, don't do that. Here's what I learned, and that was amazing. That was incredible. Part of it's that, and part of it is that's the amount of money I had.
And so why, you chose an area that traditionally has been was a dry district in Toronto for a long time. Was that part of it, or was it really just a...
Not at all. I joke around. I say, people don't come in and say, hey, it used to be dry, can I get a beer now? That's just like, they come in for a beer. I looked at over 100 spots in the city for more than a year. I had a pretty particular thing I was looking for. 4,000 to 5,000 square feet, cement floors, certain ceiling heights, certain expandability, and I almost got none of that at our location. But it was a good price, and I really liked the neighborhood. I've lived in that neighborhood for 17 years, and for 17 years it was up and coming, but I think it was about ready to go. That really wasn't the reason. If I got my first choice out in the beaches or downtown or whatever, I would have jumped on those. You need a landlord that's got some vision and some foresight. You need to be able to afford it. You need to be able to expand a little bit. And I have, friends in the Junction, so I felt really good about the spot, but we looked for a long time.
Yeah, and so in terms of the beer styles you started making, did you start with things that were maybe a bit more approachable and then have since expanded, or you were always just...
Yeah, so one of the things I really learned from the Americans and the people I talked to is make the beer you want to make and see if you'll sink or swim. So we wanted to make really almost aggressive, flavor-forward beers, and I have no regard for style guidelines. That some guy wrote a book and said a porter needs to be this because it was that in the 1700s is nonsense to me.
So you guys aren't worried about BJCP
stuff?
No,
never. Which, there's consequences to that. Beer writers and reviewers have a very hard time giving us a score because it's a little bit of this and a little bit of that. It's fine. It's hard to enter contests for beers because we don't fit a lot of guidelines. But I didn't get into it for that. It's a little disappointing some days, but that's life. We have people come in every day and say, why don't you have a lager, and why isn't this beer less bitter? I'm like, you go anywhere else in town and you can get a lager.
Exactly.
We're the only bar that doesn't have one. You've picked the only bar in Toronto to come to and be angry that we don't have a lager. I can't help you.
And so is that why you chose the name Indie Ale House? To just sort of say,
independent.
We want to do what we want to do.
We're going to do what we do. And people will either agree with us or disagree, and that's real feedback.
Right.
And we're doing fine.
So have there been any beers that you've made that you're just like, you know what, this is not going to work.
Yes,
this was just a disaster.
Absolutely. Every brewer has that, and if they don't tell you that, they're lying.
Okay.
Every brewer has that. Sometimes we make a beer where we sit down and we plan it out and we go through the chemistry and the recipe and we think this is the flavor we're going to hit, and it comes out different through no mistakes. That's just brewing, and we're usually really disappointed.
Right.
But customers will love it. I love that beer. I'm like, oh. There's brewing to what you imagined, and then there's a good beer versus a bad beer, and some of that's subjective, but a bad beer is a bad beer, and those go down the drain.
I remember it was like the carrot cake beer.
Yeah.
That was amazing.
That was amazing.
It tastes like carrots and cream cheese and raisins. And
so I won't take credit for that. There was a homebrew competition, not competition, a homebrew solicitation we did. It said, if you've got a homebrew recipe, come in and brew a pilot batch with us, and we're going to do a festival with 12 different homebrewers. We'll put your beers on tap that night, and someone sent in that recipe, and I'm like, this will not work. This is not ever going to work. And it worked. It worked.
Yeah.
It was perfect.
It was amazing.
And it went back and looked at the chemistry and looked at the recipe and said, okay, I see why it worked now, and
Yeah.
I wish I'd seen that. And we make it every year kind of in their honor. It's a great beer, and we do a lot of things like that. We have 4 or 5 beers we try to make all the time, and they're now almost regular. One's a porter. I think there are only 2 or 3 breweries in Ontario that make a porter year-round.
Your breakfast porter?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We make it year-round. We were the first brewery in Ontario to make a year-round porter, which is insane because that's the most entry-level beer there is.
Yeah.
So, there are a lot of lagers in this town.
Yeah.
We make an IPA, a Belgian IPA, and a wheat beer.
Yeah.
And even though they're not plain, they're our kind of core.
Yeah.
And then after that, we'd kind of figure out what we want to do. Some seasonality to it, some ingredient availability to it, but mostly we look at the list and say, should we have another 11% beer on right now? Probably not. Let's make something else. So we're not completely in a bubble. Right. We understand some reality, but we make what we would like to drink. Yeah. And that has served us well.
Awesome. And now speaking of sort of stuff you're making, we're obviously in your barrel facility.
Yeah.
What do you find barreling does for beers, and why is that? Because that seems to be on the rise a bit on Ontario.
Sure.
People are doing more barrel aging. What is it about barrel aging that is so exciting?
It's very humbling because as much as brewing is math and chemistry and a plan, and there's some variability in real brewing, this is out of control, difficult. Right. You have to taste and be really on top of things. Your plan is not what's going to happen. So that's
gotcha.
A little bit
sort of giving up a bit of control.
Give up a lot more control in the barrel.
Right.
It's fun.
Yeah.
It's more of a challenge. And this is real craft beer. I mean, you need a community to do this well. I need to call other brewers on a regular basis and say, have you ever had this happen? So I kind of enjoy that part of it too. It's a little bit less documented. There are a few books out on this where there's thousands of books out on brewing a lager. Right. So you're a little bit more of a pioneer, and you can customize your flavor a little bit more. You're more likely to end up with a very unique, singular flavor with this model than with putting more hops in your beer.
Gotcha.
The thing about this is it's a lot harder to get into this. Anybody can go buy beer and put some barrel in it, and you might get lucky, it might come out great. But to have a barrel program, there aren't many of us who do it, and it's a lot more expensive, a lot more waste, and it's a lot harder to achieve. So we wanted to do this.
Yeah. So all this talk about beer makes me thirsty for a beer.
For sure.
So what's pouring right now?
We have an IPA on. We have an IPA always on. That's going to be a good choice. And there's also a beer from a barrel, Flanders style beer. It's a
Let's
little
try that one.
Okay, fantastic.